Princess.
Princess. Wow, that's a recent piffer.
A recent piffer, but an iconic one. Really made a name for
Yeah.
himself.
Today's video is sponsored by Gnome Corp.
Can we get a shout out to Gnome Corp in International? Guys, shout out to Gnome Corp International. I love Gnome Corp International.
With my week on PIF finally wrapped up, I can finally show off everything I've done. And for the first time, this video actually has a script. First off, a quick PIF recap is in order. PIF, also known as Path It Forward, is a community mapping project. Over the course of a year, 52 mappers each get 1 week to do whatever they want with the map. They could do as little as moving or adding a bush, they can redesign several key aspects of the map, or they could even delete the whole thing. But, like putting a shopping cart away, PIF comes with a social contract. There's nothing stopping you from deleting everything, but for the sake of the community, most people try to conserve several key aspects of PIF's history. So, every version has to find its own balance between what the mapper wants to do and what they can responsibly do. For this video, I want to focus on the why behind some of the decisions I've made. I'm trying to go deeper into mapping theory and talking about what actually makes a map competitive. One of the biggest problems with PIF right now is how hard it is to actually improve it in a meaningful way. Most maps get tons of playtests during development so the community can help refine angles and balance things out. PIF has only had 2 playtests in over half a year. On top of that, there's almost no incentive for mappers to balance the map. Most people just make whatever changes they feel like during their week, and even if someone wanted to push it in a better direction, the map gets passed forward so quickly that every step forward has an inevitable million steps backward. While working on PIF 28, making the map more competitive was my main goal, but the current state of the map was super imbalanced. PIF isn't all bad, but throughout its almost 30 variations, mappers have added some pretty absurd gameplay mechanics. It started with PIF 6 when Olaf added the Sky Bridge, which overlooked the entire map and was incredibly overpowered. During the first playtest, it was leveraged to get out of bounds and take unfair fights, often catching people completely off guard and ruining the flow of the map. But understanding my unique beef with the Sky Bridge and its creator Olaf actually goes a long way back. With the release of CS2, MapCore announced the Big Adventures contest, a prestigious contest in which several winners had their maps actually make it into CS2. This contest gave new mappers such as myself a chance to submit maps and see how we stacked up against people who have been mapping for decades. Most of my maps came from CSGO and were incredibly basic, but they were a lot of fun to mess around with, even if I'd only ever played them 1v1 with whichever friend I could get into playing with me. With CS2's new mapping tools and everything I learned from CSGO, I submitted my map and eagerly waited to hear what unbiased people thought. Soon after, I saw Olaf's livestream where he went over all the maps, and I watched as he called me Steve Jobs of mapmaking. Not because my layout was revolutionary, but because I invented new ways to absolutely butcher a map. As a new mapper, that was brutal, but it was true, and my maps since then have improved a lot. However, if you look a little deeper, that livestream was co-hosted by one T1 Mir. T1 is another PIF mapper who got to work on PIF 10 and played in the playtest. In that playtest, he committed a crime far worse than that of Olaf.
This guy's on fire.
Yeah. He's usually not that good.
He said this despite the fact that I just dunked on him in the PIF playtest.
Oh. Play that.
And outside of that, I had dumpstered him back to back to back to— oh shoot, wrong clip. Despite being straight buns at the game, T1 tried to balance the Sky Bridge by adding lasers and walls that would seal the bridge and force anyone in it to run away. So, with each attempt to destroy PIF, changes were made to try and balance the map back out, all while still retaining aspects that had ruined it in the first place. On a side note, I don't have any real beef with either of these people. I've watched all of Olaf's videos, maybe except this one. And I actually found out about PIF through his content. I've also done lots of testing for T1's map, High's work. Check it out in the workshop. Back on PIF. Fixing the sky bridge was my first task. I wanted to keep it around since there was a relic 22 PIFs old, but it messed with the gameplay too much. So I disconnected a segment, moved it around, and down closer to A site, and turned the entrance into a key route for CTs to take. If anything, the sky bridge became more relevant than ever, but I wanted to keep part of the old one alive, so the remaining segments can still be seen and players can use a booster to jump up to a small segment overlooking A site. With these changes, the old sky bridge entrance is no longer needed, which is actually good for the competitive side of the map, since it made the site far too big and created several unfair angles. So I was able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. However, A site still had issues. Most bomb sites need to fulfill 3 criteria: positioning, intrigue, and fights. Bomb site A has some pretty good fight setup once we remove that back platform, but still struggles with positioning and intrigue. With how the map sits, it only has 2 entrances on complete opposite sides. If the Ts try to flank the site, CTs are required to do an almost complete 180, which is borderline impossible. So, shifting entrances around is one change I had to make. Also, compared to the funky goo containers on B, the site is rather bland. Unless the Ts have a problem with gray boxes, there's no real reason to attack the site. So going after some sort of theme could make the site more intriguing and iconic. So, what were my fixes? For positioning, CTs now get free access to the Skybridge entrance, which overlooks most of the site. This is the main route for CTs and also provides a key flank for unaccounted Ts. Where the old entrance was is now an alleyway. This makes CTs fight for more area, but it also gives them more positions to control the site from. Ts now have a strong alternative route to A site. Earlier versions of PIF used to have a ramp like this, however, it got lost as the map developed. With the site now being easier to access, I wanted to give it a stronger theme. I've always found castle maps pretty interesting, so I went with that. Most of the cover stayed the same, I just added detail. However, I did tweak a few things. The headshot cover could be pretty annoying, so I lowered it and changed it into a wall that plays into the castle theme. Also, the back of the site is now covered. I wanted to make it look like a barn roof, but I'm such a nice guy that I left it as a future problem for the next guy.
Well, that's fantastic. A really smart decision, young man. We can put that check in a money market mutual fund. Then we'll reinvest the earnings into foreign currency accounts with compounding interest, and it's gone.
What?
With the introduction of the new Skybridge route, I wanted to make sure it wasn't too OP. So I killed another 2 birds with a different stone by blocking off some angles and adding some interesting shapes to the site. Also, with this new tower, there's a skill jump that allows Ts to push forward and catch CTs off guard. With these changes, A site is much more dynamic and looks a lot better. So it's time to head over to the other side of the map and look at 2 of the biggest problems on B site, B main and B connector. Before we get into what's wrong with PIF's B site, we need to understand what makes a good site entrance in the first place. Most competitive maps have somewhere between 4 and 5 entrances across the whole map. Mirage has A main, palace, connector, apartments, and sometimes top mid or underpass. Nuke has outside, squeaky, hut, and ramp. The number hovers around 4 and 5 for a reason. In a standard 5v5, you usually have 2 CTs per site. With 1 or 2 entrances, those 2 players can realistically cover all the main threats with utility where they hold out for their team to rotate over. It's impossible for a single CT to watch multiple entrances at once, unless you're Jame. But the moment Ts take mid control, those extra sightlines open right up, which is why mid fights matter so much. PIF breaks this balance pretty bad. Right now, PIF has 6 entrances total when you count A main, Caesar, mid, left side B, right side B, and the boost. 3 of which are leading directly into B. That's way too many. It basically requires 3 CTs just to have a chance at holding it. 1 for each major entrance, which leaves almost nobody for mid and A. You also can't delay a push with utility because you need to smoke 3 different spots at once. B simply asks too much for the CT side. The layout makes it even worse. B has this kind of circular feel to the entrances, similar to Mirage's A site. On Mirage, if you clear main and start a flank, you still have to worry about the palace lurk. The same goes for PIF. Pushing the left side and going under means you miss the right side, and vice versa. It's very hard to gain any meaningful control. That's already a big problem, but the connector makes it even worse. On most maps, the connector is one of the strongest tools CTs have. It creates constant tension and gives Ts a real reason to fight for mid. On Mirage A, the connector is right there as soon as you take mid. Ts see it immediately, and fighting for mid actually gives them a super strong flanking option, while CTs can still contest it. On PIF, the B connector is tucked so far back behind mid that it barely functions as an alternative route. Even if Ts push all the way up to it, they're basically already at CT spawn, and at that point, why bother with the connector when it could just keep going and flank the entire site? Because of this, Ts almost never go mid, and when mid isn't being fought for, Cs are right next to it feels even more redundant. So, we have two connected problems. B main has too many entrances and asks too much from CTs, and the connector is so poorly placed that it doesn't even create any real dynamics or give Ts a meaningful path. Fixing this isn't about removing every entrance or making B feel impossible to take. It's about reducing the effective number of strong options Ts have while attacking B, making the main entrance feel more linear so CTs actually get rewarded for taking space, and repositioning the connector so it becomes a real threat that forces CTs to play mid and connector properly. There isn't a single correct way to do this, and that's what makes mapping so interesting. Every change has trade-offs, and the goal is to make B feel more like a site that rewards good play from both sides instead of just overwhelming the defenders. Well, you may be asking, how did you fix this? The first step I took was removing the right side of B main, which has been a gimmick appearing off and on throughout several versions of PIF. Doing this already cuts down on one entrance to the site. Then, to balance it back out, I expanded the platform for Ts to boost up as a way to entice more players into a strong alternative and underused option. While doing this, I noticed that B main felt kinda odd and like it was at an awkward angle, so I moved a goo container forward and made it straight again. But, pushing back through still felt very daunting, so I filled in one of the windows, reducing the amount of places that flanking CTs can get caught out from. And with that, B main was perfectly fixed with absolutely no problems. Time to turn to connector. The first thing I did was move the entrance to mid so that I could get right in the middle of all the action. Then, instead of directly linking it up to B, I added a hallway in the middle. This helped isolate B a little bit, but still kept the action pretty high. It also allowed me to prevent super long angles that would have been too OP for someone with an AWP. Finally, I added a unique gameplay gimmick. In the middle of connector, there's a pillar that you could shoot out sections of. This allows Ts to better flush out any CTs, but they end up losing a strong angle while going onto B site. With everything in its right place, my week on PIF is over, but my video on PIF is not. This is probably the most thought I've ever put into a video, and it's the first time I've actually done a full script. I wanted to talk about this stuff because I find it super interesting. Presenting certain information to players and deciding routes are some of the most intriguing parts of map making. One more thing. For my next project, I'm going to try and make a map in 3 hours. I've had this idea for a while and T1 actually stole it from me. The reason I'm putting this in the video is because I think it could be really cool if we got several mappers on it. Even if you're brand new to mapping and debating whether or not you could do a PIF week, this is your option to get in and test out some of your mapping and see what other people think of it. In the grand scheme of mapping, it's a small commitment and allows everyone to get some wacky designs going. If you're interested, hit me up and let me know. Based on how many people we get, it could be Wingman, 5v5, or maybe something weird. And I'd be down to put 20 bucks on it, which is a lot more than the previous $5 because inflation is getting crazy. Finally, I wanted to say thank you. It's been really cool seeing people engage with the videos and a pleasure listening to all the music submissions. With the music submissions, I was just expecting people to send in stuff that they listen to online, but the amount of people that actually make music, and super good music, is mind-boggling. But if I'm being honest, outside of my intros, a lot of my videos have been low-key kinda ass. Anyways, thanks for watching and see ya in the PIF 30 show match.